What's the best alternative flour on the AIP diet? Let's talk about it. Hey Health Heroes, welcome back to Adamimmune, the channel all about helping you improve your autoimmune health naturally. And today I want to talk about the best and the worst AIP flours, gluten-free, grain-free substitute flours for, wheat or all that other stuff. And obviously on AIP we can't just go to the store and buy gluten-free flour or all that all-purpose mix. So we have to get a little creative. We have to use some different alternative stuff that you normally wouldn't see people use in normal recipes. But these are going to be just as good. Well, some of them. I'm going to tell you which ones that I love and which ones I really don't care for. So I will try to go over the pros and cons of each of these alternatives, and you're going to have to decide for yourself what's important to you, because a flour for me might be great and a flour for you might be different, right? We're all going to be looking for different things in our flour, so let's get to it. Let's first get into coconut flour, because most people, when they think paleo alternative or a low carb alternative, they will think of coconut flour, and it is true. It is one of the lowest carb alternative flour, substitute flours for regular gluten-free flours that exist. For 2 tablespoons, it is 2 grams of net carbs, which is crazy low. And by the way, when I'm making something, I'm usually making like a keto AIP mug cake, so I'm making them in small serving size. I used to use just this primarily, but the flavor is somewhat lacking, so I actually like to mix different flours into that, and I will get into that. I do like to make my own blend, but this is great. Otherwise, it does have a touch of sweetness, but the texture kind of leaves you wanting, right? And it is super dense. Anything you make is going to be super dense with this. It's going to be thick. It's not a good 1-to-1 ratio with a regular, let's say, wheat. Let's compare all this to regular wheat flour, because that's what I used to use in the before time. So if you would have to use way less of this if you're going to make a regular recipe, a regular wheat recipe. But it is good. It does have a nice flavor to it, and it does go with certain things well, but it really isn't a good substitute for wheat recipes. What I will say is it is the cheapest, okay? So what it has going for it, let's say the pros, it's the cheapest of all these flours, and it also is the lowest carb. So if you're looking for that, this is the one for you. Next up, we have Anthony's Organic Tiger Nut Flour. You can get this from alternative different places, it's fine, but I like Anthony's brand. That's what's on my shop as well. You guys can check that out in the description. I have some of this stuff because I recommend what I use, right? But this is extra fine. I definitely recommend going with the extra fine. Tiger Nut does have a tendency to be gritty at times, and in some batches you will actually get a really almost sandy-like batch, unfortunately. The very first one I got was sandy. It would be very gritty, so when I'm making it up, I mix it really well, kind of break it down a little bit, but you kind of get used to that as well. I hate to say that, but you do get used to it, just trying different alternative flours. Some of them do have a little bit different texture. They're not as super fine and refined, but that doesn't bother me so much because I'm adding texture to my mug cakes anyway. I'll add coconut flakes and other different things I'll talk about here in a few, but this is a really good substitute. It's not as dense as coconut flour, and it has a much better flavor. Like, you could eat this by itself. This makes a really good, like, no oatmeal alternative, and I really like mixing it with coconut flour as well, like a half and half, or actually maybe 2/3 this and 1/3 coconut flour, and then you can mix cinnamon in it and sea salt and coconut milk, and that makes a really good cold cereal. I don't do breakfast, but I like dessert, right? So that my breakfast would be a dessert. It's like a treat at the end of the day. As far as carbs go, this is kind of middle of the road, and that's why I don't like to overdo it, because I really do restrict my carbs. So I gotta break this down because the serving size is a 1/4 cup, but a 1/4 cup is 4 tablespoons, so I use 2 tablespoons usually in my mug cakes, actually sometimes 3. So, but let's say for 2 tablespoons, net carbs would be about 5.5 grams for 2 tablespoons, so really not too bad. It is sweeter than coconut flour, and it does give it a sweetness, and obviously I'm not using like other sweeteners in my stuff. I'm not really a big fan of that. I like using whole foods that make things naturally sweeter, like cinnamon, Ceylon cinnamon I use. I'm a big fan of carob powder. I'll show you that here in a few. Tiger nut is not a nut, by the way. It is a root. It is a tuber. So it's more, like on the potato family, something like that. But I really like it, and it is one of my favorite things. So I wish it were slightly lower carb, but for 5.5 carbs in a serving, that's not too bad, especially if you're cutting it with coconut flour. It is gritty, but it has a great flavor, and you can use it in a variety of different recipes. It's not exactly like a one-to-one recipe of wheat though. You would probably still use less of this. It's still not going to be the same texture as wheat flour though. It's not going to be as like that chewiness, that give, that bend. That's really hard to come by. But you will get that with this, actually, believe it or not. And this is cassava flour. This is just a really strange theory. It's another root, it's a tuber, but it is much higher in carbs than your tiger nut, and I don't care as much for the flavors. It doesn't have like its own natural sweetness. It's more of a, I don't know, just a dry nuttiness kind of, but it is good for using if you're looking for that consistency of regular flour. You're gonna get that with this. You can use this as a 1-to-1 ratio with regular wheat flour recipes, or you could cut it down with, you know, maybe use a little less of this and maybe add a little bit of coconut flour, add a little more liquid to the batter. The carbs though, if you're looking at 2 tablespoons, you're going to be looking at 12 grams of carbs, okay? So to me that would be quite a bit, especially for one serving, one little mug cake, especially because I'm adding other things to it here, and I'll show you in a little bit what I'm doing. But I gotta just be careful because all these things add up, right? As you can see, I don't use too much of this, and I'm probably going to give this away to my friends that just went paleo. I think they will get some use out of this. Actually, I accidentally made cheese using this. I had like this cauliflower. Let's call it a sauce. It was basically the same sauce as my orange sauce, except instead of carrots, substitute cauliflower, steamed cauliflower. And then I was like, what am I going to do with this? I can't just eat it by itself. So I mixed it with this, and I'm thinking I'm going to make like a cauliflower cake or bread or something like that, because I was thinking you can make zucchini bread, you can make some weird cakes out of pretty much any vegetable or fruit. Anyway, it actually came out very cheesy, okay? So if you don't like cook it all the way through, you're gonna get a really, really chewy texture and just like cheese consistency. It's crazy. So I ended up making a cauliflower cheese accidentally, and I'm thinking, well, why don't I just put a batter on this of coconut flour and fry it? And I did, and this is what I got. I made mozzarella sticks, and no, they were not good. I had my friends try them, and they were not impressed, and I think I burned them too, so yeah. Now this one is actually a derivative of that cassava flour. Tapioca flour is made by taking the starch out of the cassava and just deriving that. So it's just starch, alright? Just the starch from the cassava. So this is obviously going to be more higher carb, and they take all the fiber, they take all the protein, everything out of it. So I don't really believe in using things like this, or at least you should probably limit them, because I would consider this a refined food, which I don't like to get into. As you see, I haven't even opened it. I haven't even tried this one. So I couldn't say for the consistency. I've never used tapioca in my life. But the carbs are, for 2 tablespoons, that would be almost 14 grams of carbs. So I can't recommend using this in good faith. I will probably give this away as well, but it is an option if you want to go that route. This is another one of my favorites. This is sweet potato flour, and I didn't really know this was a thing until recently, but I found this on Amazon. I'm like, yeah, I love sweet potatoes, and I wonder how it's going to be. So I've been experimenting with this for the past few weeks, and I really, really enjoy the flavor. It's so rich. In fact, it's so rich you have to cut it just based on the flavor, because it's just so sweet. I mean, to me it is, right? But I've been pretty much sweetener free, sugar free for years now. So it's really cool too. It's got this like orange hue to it. So it's not like the other ones. The other ones are all pretty much white. There's a little bit of brownness to the tiger nut flour, but other than that, that's a little something different. But let's look at the carbs in this. It is a little bit higher than tiger nut, but it's a little bit lower than cassava. At 2 tablespoons, it would be 9 grams of carbs. So it is a lot higher than your tiger nut, almost double. So my favorite blend would be 1/3 this, 1/3 tiger nut flour, and 1/3 coconut flour. That way you get the best texture, even though it's not going to be wheat flour like at all, but you can make a good brownie that way or something like that. It's going to have a great flavor, and it's not going to be too high in carbs because of that coconut flour. It does have a better consistency than, say, the coconut flour. It's very on par with the tiger nut flour, but it's not going to be like as good as your cassava flour. I don't know, something magical about that. I just want to give a friendly reminder that baking soda is actually AIP compliant, but baking powder is not. And with all my mug cakes, I do add some protein to it because I don't like to add any like like carbs into my diet without the protein to balance that out. So I do have Vital Proteins that ShopAIP.com sent me. Check out their website and check out their YouTube channel. I will leave the link to that in the description below. I do use the Anthony's brand as well for collagen pet types, and this one's all out as you can see, but I've actually ordered this one a couple times. It's just cheaper, right? And this is the one that I have on my shop because I'm always looking for the best price. As far as quality though, like which one is better, like I don't know, I couldn't say. I've had an equal experience with both, but I didn't have to pay for that, so that was nice. If I had to pay for it, I would have been probably happier with this because it's cheaper. But again, you know, work within your own budget. Recently, I did get this beef gelatin. This isn't collagen peptides, so it's not going to be as easier to digest for absolutely everyone, but I can tolerate it just fine. And again, this is grass-fed. All of these are from grass-fed, pasture-raised beef, and I do like it. This is probably your cheapest bet. Like, this just is going to last like absolutely forever. This is 1.5 pounds, and I just add a scoop of this to my stuff. Actually, instead of using eggs, you can make a gelatin egg, which is basically you just mix some of this with water, microwave it for like 30 seconds. You got to activate that gelatin, and then it pretty much, and mix it up really good. It acts just like an egg in your recipes. But I can actually tolerate pasture-raised eggs that I get locally. I do have to show this because I do add this as a treat. I don't use this all the time. I get this from my local organic food health shop, and it's got some stuff on it. This is carob powder, and it's dry roasted, and it is a great substitute for chocolate. Those of us on AIP, a lot of us can't have caffeine, and I can't tolerate caffeine at all, so I have not been able to introduce chocolate at all. It gives me just migraines. It really messes me up. So this has been a kind of, I don't want to say a lifesaver, but it's kind of a nice treat. You can make your own chocolate by mixing it with coconut oil and like cooling it. Actually, mix it with coconut butter, and you're going to have a better experience, and oil, and it's going to be even richer and deeper and probably sweeter. But this is great, except for 1.5 tablespoons is 13 grams of carbs. Actually 12 if you go net carbs. So 12 grams of net carbs, 1.5 tablespoons. I use about 1, so that would be about 8 grams of carbs, give or take. And I don't do that every day, okay? A lot of time I'll just make like a cinnamon mug cake. I think this is really great. A lot of people don't care for the flavor, but I like it. It's slightly bitter. It's almost like very coffee-like. Another thing I can't have. I know a lot of you can't tolerate a lot of these things. You can't tolerate eggs, and you can't tolerate coconut or cassava or different, and I know that's how it's going to be for all of us. We all have our own personal intolerances. So again, eat what you can, eat within your budget, eat what you like. Well, that has kind of been my different flour rankings on AIP, and I guess some different recommendations for using in your mug cakes. Some baking tips there. I like to experiment a lot. I consider myself like a food alchemist in the kitchen. It's hard to be as creative now that I am so restricted and limited, but I try not to focus on what I can't have, and I just think about what I can have, or what can I do with this, what can I make, what crazy concoction can I come up with today. I'm not always like that. Sometimes I'm just super hardcore minimalist Adam, and I just eat, you know, basically beef and greens and put some olive oil on or whatever, and get my calories in and my nutrition, and I don't worry about all this fancy treats or anything. I don't do this every day, just trying to clarify. But, you know, it's not a terrible thing to do. Like, instead of cheating, treat yourself, right? Just treat yourself within your AIP guidelines and you're good. Alright, it's getting warm in here, so I have to turn off my AC every time I make a video, so I usually get a little warm. If you enjoyed, drop a like, smash that subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and if you want to help support me and the channel, follow that Patreon link in the description. Thanks for watching, see you next time.